The Supreme Court this week announced it would hear an abortion case from another state, Mississippi, where abortions will be banned after 15 weeks of pregnancy. It's the first major abortion access case to go before the Supreme Court's new 6-3 conservative majority, raising questions about the future of Roe v. Wade. That 1973 landmark ruling established a woman's right to an abortion. For more on this, let's bring in CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford. Hi there, Jan. So how might new laws like those in Mississippi and Texas impact abortion regulation nationally?
Well, all of these laws are part of kind of this targeted effort to get a case to the Supreme Court, really to challenge Roe versus Wade, hoping that this new conservative majority will finally set aside the core holding of Roe versus Wade, which is that a woman has a constitutional right to an abortion. So you see these laws across the country. Mississippi is one example, obviously the Texas law that just passed, that really kind of take Roe head on. And under Roe and subsequent cases, those would be blatantly unconstitutional. The hope is now from abortion opponents that this new court will see things differently, allow these restrictions, and limit or overturn Roe versus Wade in the subsequent case of Casey, which is a 1992 case.
Well, Jan, what are some other cases of note likely to come before the court in the near future?
Well, this term, I've got to say, it has been kind of quiet. I mean, the justices have one pretty significant case involving Obamacare, another challenge to Obamacare, once again at the Supreme Court. I think based on the arguments in that case, the justices are unlikely to dramatically change it or overrule it. They're looking at the individual mandate, the requirement that you have to buy insurance. Even if they say you can't do that, the rest of the law still would stand. So, I feel like kind of this term is, and we'll get all these bigger decisions, of course, next month in June, but it's kind of the calm before the storm, which is next term. Next term is going to be one of the most consequential sessions, I think, really that the Supreme Court has had in decades. Obviously, anytime you get an abortion case, there's renewed and heightened focus on the court. But this isn't just one of those, every other year or two abortion cases where you're looking at clinic restrictions or regulations on doctor licensing requirements. This is a frontal assault on Roe versus Wade. So this is the most significant abortion case the Supreme Court will have taken up since at least 1992. So right there, that's, Katie bar the door, right? But already the court has said it's going to also hear cases on gun rights, whether or not you have a right to concealed carry outside your home, a major Second Amendment case. They've got a big death penalty case involving the Boston Marathon bomber, looking at whether capital punishment jury selection was needed to be redone and how that would affect capital punishment. So already, here we are just in May. This next year for the Supreme Court is shaping up to be something. I mean, I've covered the court since 1994, and I don't know that I will have ever covered a term like what's ahead for us.
Yeah, and so with that as the backdrop, Jan, there have been discussions about whether Justice Stephen Breyer might or should retire. He's 82 years old. What's the likelihood of that happening?
No one knows. And I think you see a lot of the drumbeat now from the left saying, just go ahead and retire. Democrats have a majority in the Senate. We can get someone young that'll be there for, 30 years or more, like the Republicans do on the right with their justices, get young ones up there. But I have to say, I would be surprised if Justice Breyer retires this year. Now, he may, and he's not let on his thinking, at least to a lot of people around the court. But I would be surprised. He is fit as can be. He's active, mentally sharp, and as I was saying earlier, this is a huge term coming up. So I can see Justice Breyer, who is really someone who just, he has such a strong sense of duty and loyalty. He cares deeply about the court as an institution, about the public's views on the Supreme Court. I'd be very surprised if he says, you know what, I'm not going to write it out for next term. I think he needs to be there as the court goes into this whirlwind and not a new justice that will be taking his place. And what difference does it make? He can retire next summer if he's concerned about the Democratic majority in the Senate. It'll still be the same thing next year. So that's my bet. But no one knows. Finally. And, it's always dangerous to predict things at the Supreme Court. But I guess if I were saying today, I will say this, I will be surprised if he retires this term. And I hope he doesn't.
Well, and I mean, he would be
a wonderful justice.
Yeah, and I know, Jan, I mean, you've literally written the book when it comes to these justices, and I think you obviously would have been kind of in tune with any discussion about whether or not he wasn't up to the job. So it's interesting to hear about the way in which, this is being discussed.
Not missing a beat. He gives speeches. He's constantly on the move. In fact, he does more. I mean, I don't know where he gets all his energy. I mean, I couldn't keep up with him on events that we've done together. I'm exhausted, and he's still standing there like taking pictures with people. So I don't really see it happening this year.
We only have about a minute left, Jan, but I do want to ask you about President Biden's commission examining the Supreme Court. It met for the first time yesterday, and this was formed after some Democrats called for an increase in the number of justices on the court. What happened at that meeting?
Well, they're obviously looking at kind of, looking past in the past about how Republicans were able to get 3 justices, President Trump, 3 justices on the Supreme Court, tremendous pressure from the left to then bring in more left-leaning justices. And these are highly regarded people that are on this commission. I do not think there's any political will to increase the number of justices on the Supreme Court. The justices, left and right, have said this is a terrible idea. I don't think there's a political will in the Senate, but this serves a very important function for Democrats. It keeps the threat out there. There is a hope among Democrats that as long as they're talking about expanding the Supreme Court, maybe those conservatives won't swing for the fences in some of these big cases that are coming up. It's kind of a way of like holding that over their heads and potentially restraining them from some of these sweeping, potentially conservative victories, whether it's in the abortion case or gun rights or anything. So I think that's more the significance of the commission now, which is we could do this, so you guys watch yourself.
All right, Jan Crawford. Jan, I don't get to talk to you that often. It's really great to have you on Red and Blue. Thank you.
Oh, it's great to be here. Nice talking with you, Elaine.